Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for a regular JINSA update on the war in Gaza and increasingly beyond as things heat up in Israel's north along the Lebanese border. I'm Blaise Michel, JINSA's Vice President for Policy, and honored to be joined by two of our Israeli colleagues, the Julian and Jenny Josephson, Senior Vice President for Israeli Affairs, General Yaakov Aish, formerly the Head of Operations and Israeli Chief of Staff and Defense Attaché here in Washington, and JINSA Distinguished Fellow, General Yaakov Amidror, formerly National Security Advisor to the Prime Minister. Generals, thank you both for joining us. Maybe if I could start with you, General Amidror. The reporting here in town in Washington is that the Rafah operation is going to come to an end soon, that it's proceeding and almost over. What is the status of the operation to clear Rafah, and how much longer do you expect combat operations to continue? And you're on mute, General.
Thank you for the opportunity. I think that if you can borrow from Churchill's history of the Second World War, it's the beginning of it's the end of the beginning. I think that the first stage of more intensive operations inside the Gaza Strip to dismantle the battalions and the brigades of Hamas is coming to the end. Will it take another 2-3 weeks or even a month, or if we have a good luck and more intelligence, even another month, just to dismantle all the infrastructure in the area and the tunnels that some of them led to the other side of the border, probably. But this is the time that we are speaking about. That it will be the end of the intensive part, and from then on, for probably a year, the IDF will continue to operate inside the Gaza Strip based on intelligence, which will be collected on the ground. That intelligence that will be exploited from the materials which had been infiscated by our forces in the headquarters of Hamas, and interrogations of terrorists of Hamas which had been captured and will be captured. And the combination between the infrastructure that we can find in all these papers and media that had been taken from the headquarters, and the interrogation of new terrorists which be captured on the ground and can give a very accurate information about the situation of today, both will give us and of course the networks of intelligence that we are now building in the Gaza Strip. All that supposed to give us the ability to go back into Gaza whenever there will be a need, with forces which are less than what we have to do today. Of course, today in Gaza, in Rafah itself, we have three operational brigades team. So that will be with less forces, less firepower, less air force, but more accurate to find the remnants of Hamas infrastructure and to destroy any attempt to regroup in Gaza. And this cleaning will take probably a year. In the West Bank, it took us 4 years in 2002, from 2002 on, to clean the area and to reduce the level of terrorism to the level which is bearable. What we want to achieve in Gaza is, first, it will be disconnected from Egypt, and we have to find a way how to do it along the Philadelphia corridor. Second, that they cannot produce inside Gaza in any center of that is a little bit sophisticated, but not too much, to produce rockets, missiles, and weapon systems. And third, to destroy each ability to build a chain of command and control. And for that, we have to kill the commanders and to destroy the centers. And parallel to all these efforts, we have the mission of bringing the hostages back home. That is more about intelligence than anything else. And these are the missions that the IDF will continue to have in the strip. After dismantling the brigades and the battalions in the brigade and the battalions in Rafah, this is the operational control of the area, which allow us to move from one side to another with less ability of the other side to block us. From time to time, probably we will have to fight and to kill commanders and terrorists of the Hamas and Islamic Jihad. But I think that basically that will give us the ability to maneuver inside the Gaza Strip. Parallel to all that, we are building now the perimeter along the border. It will be between half and kilometer. I mean, between half to, it will be half a mile averagely. In this area, it will be an area to which no one can enter without risking his life. Mines and so on and so forth. One of the mistakes that we did before the 7th of October, everyone could reach the fence. And here we want to build a system in which no one can reach the fence from the inner side of the Gaza Strip. We are not going to make it a sovereign Israeli area. It will remain part of the Gaza Strip. We are not changing the legal situation of the perimeter, but it will be controlled by our fire, and no one and everyone who will enter will risk his life. It will be will use the science and so on and so forth to address the issue that civilians will not go in. We are doing it now. We are cleaning the area. We have to destroy some buildings and to clean the everything which is there, because we want a clear sight from our side. And I think it will be very crucial to the ability to guarantee safety and for the settlers which will come back, all the Israeli citizens which will come back to their communities along the border with Gaza, what we are calling in Hebrew the envelope of Gaza. And this is very important from our point of view. It's part of the mission of the army is to secure these people who are coming back to their communities. Part of it had been destroyed and we have to rebuild it. Some of them we have to replenish, but it's a long process with a lot of money inside. But from the military point of view, we have to secure the area in a way which people can be guaranteed that the 7th of October will not occur again. And for that, we have to build the perimeter along the border, and we are doing. I think the combination of such a perimeter, the ability of the IDF to act inside the Gaza Strip, and destroying all the centers in which they produce weapon systems and munition, and continue to disconnect the Gaza from the Sinai Peninsula, will give the people around the Gaza the feeling the security is there, and they don't have to worry about another attempt like the 7th of October, or even to suffer from rockets and missiles which might be launched into the area. If that cannot be produced in the future in the Gaza Strip, and Gaza Strip will be disconnected from Egypt, the number of what remain in Gaza is very low. Of course, there are probably some hundreds of missiles and rockets, but at the end, it's not the numbers, we're not even close to the numbers which had been there before. And what's important for us is to destroy any attempt to refill the batteries of the missiles and rockets. That we have to be sure that we succeeded to destroy all the manufacturing system of Hamas. It will take time, but I believe that within a few months we will be in a position that we can say it's over. And I want to
Thank you.
I want to connect it to the next question. It is clear here that the more the feeling of the IDF will be that less forces are needed in Gaza, the easier the decision will be about Lebanon.
All right. Well, let's stay with Gaza for just a moment longer. In general, I wanted to ask you about what the IDF is encountering in Rafah, how it's fighting, what sort of threats it's facing. Last weekend, we saw a deadly incident with, I believe, 8 IDF casualties, which is the highest that we've seen in a number of months. What does that tell us about the level of strength of Hamas, about how they're fighting in Rafah compared to what we saw in other parts of Gaza?
Well, a few things totally related to your questions. With your permission, I'd like to start by explaining the importance of the Philadelphia axis and then the linkage between that to the way we fight in Rafah. It's not a secret that it took us some time to take the decision and to go into Rafah. Meanwhile, 2 things have happened. One, those battalions, that brigade that is in Rafah had the time not just to regroup and to reorganize, but also to understand the immediate lessons that they have to apply in Rafah and in the refugee camps surrounding Rafah. And I'm talking about the lessons from Khan Yunis and the other cities and neighborhoods that the IDF took before. And add to that the fact that those who ran away from the other neighborhoods and villages, they ran into Rafah, which was kind of a safe haven for them, at least for 2 or 3 months. So basically, we are talking here about an area that had the time to not just regroup, but really to get ready to the IDF assault. The second is the fact that the IDF is using different tools and different tactics than it was using in other places in order to avoid 2 things. One is to avoid any confliction with the Egyptians, which are right there along the border. And the second is to allow the evacuation of more than 1 million Palestinians from Rafah into the humanitarian area, into the humanitarian zone, and only then to start and to fight in the Rafah and the neighborhoods. So these 2 constraints has their own implications. And it has its own toll on the way you fight. Also, the size of force that the IDF is applying in Rafah area and the close air support has its own implication. Having said that, it's quite clear that Hamas took full advantage of the fact that they were controlling the Philadelphia axis, and due to the vicinity to the Egyptians, what they did, they built launching pads along the axis. And by that, they allowed themselves not just to launch from almost a secure area. It was quite clear to them that the IDF would not retaliate to those points because the IDF might hit an Egyptian target. It could be the border police, it could be the Egyptian military, and it could be Egyptian civilians. And they took advantage fully, and I would call it an abuse, obviously, of the fact that the IDF is totally sensitive to those issues. And that's exactly what the forces have found along the Philadelphia axis above ground. I'm talking about launching pads above ground. And then I'm coming to the second element that was mentioned by General Amidror, which is the tunnels dug under the ground. And people have to understand, we are talking about few types of tunnels. There are those tunnels that are used for raw materials, and I'm talking about wide tunnels that would allow machinery and raw materials into the Gaza Strip. Back then in 2011 and 12, know-how came from Syria. It was applied in small factories and workshops inside Gaza, and by that they started to build, mortars and rockets. And the other tunnels were used for smuggling weapons, anti-tank, air defense capabilities, rockets, and so on and so forth. So far, what the IDF have found is more than 20 tunnels, and they are in the midst of mapping and demolishing them. And the basic assumption is that they have another 20 more at least. They have to find them, map them, demolish them, while they are taking in consideration all the consequences, not only to the Palestinian side, but also to the Egyptian side. And due to that, everything has to be done very carefully with the very special measures, and most of the focus is going on to that effort. While they are doing that, they are fighting inside Rafah, and they are fighting in order to dismantle the Rafah brigade, and they are fighting in a very densely populated area. Most of the houses, by the way, are not really houses. And for that sake, everything is highly sensitive. And during that fight, a very heavy APC that the IDF is using based on the Merkava got hit. And today also a tank got hit by an anti-tank missile. This is part of the fact that they are fighting in such a densely populated area, and the fact that they are using different tactics which are less aggressive in order to avoid collateral damage. So these are the constraints. The mission, as it was described, is really to dismantle that brigade. And it seems like they are going to finish the work in the next week or two.
Since you both mentioned the importance of controlling the Philadelphia corridor and preventing smuggling through the tunnels, as well as Hamas's position there, is there consideration or discussion or negotiations to put in place either the no man zone, the security border that you were discussing around the rest of the border, General Amidror, or putting in place some version of the underground barrier and sensor system that's on the rest of the border? What are the plans for securing the southern border of Gaza?
No, it cannot be part of the perimeter because Israel does not have any control on the area. And the problem is the legal issue. If Israel remain on the corridor, it means that Israel is bordering Gaza Strip from all three sides and controlling the sea on the other side. And in such a situation, Israel is automatically becoming the state responsible for providing the population of Gaza in the future everything which is needed, from security to education, from medicines to water, food, and policy, whatever. People should be provided by the sovereign. And I think that Israel does not want this obligation, and we have to find a system in which we are not there, but we can come whenever there is a need, and will be sensors which allow us to control any attempt to build a new system of tunnels. We don't have a good solution yet, it will take time. But parallel to the year during which we will mopping up the area, we will have to find the solution. It probably will be with the coordination with the Egyptians and the maybe United States of America. But there is no clear-cut solution that can be described today. It's a huge challenge, and we will have to find what can be done without taking responsibility for the Gaza passages to Egypt, something that we don't want.
One of the options, Blaze, I assume, is now under a discussion between our representatives in Washington with their colleagues, is the option of building an underground barrier, such as the one that we have built with Gaza. The issue is who is going to operate it. It has to be done, with full consideration with the Egyptians. So I assume it's a bit more complicated than we see from here, but it could be an option. Bear in mind that it doesn't have to be as long as the one that we have built, because here we are talking only about 14 kilometers from the sea to the triangle of borders between the Palestinian side, Egyptian side, and the Israeli side.
Looking now to the north, General Amador, you mentioned how the two parts of the conflict are related, and how the number of forces in Gaza relates to what Israel feels it might be able to do in Lebanon. But we've seen in the last week a continued escalation of strikes coming from Lebanon by Hezbollah into Israel. We've seen yet another high-level Hezbollah commander killed. We've seen the U.S. envoy Amos Hochstein come to the region again. What is your assessment of the trend or the direction of the conflict? Is it heading closer to full-scale war? Is it closer to reaching some sort of resolution?
It's two independent processes. If Mr. Amos Hochstein will achieve an agreement, it is not connected to what's going on now on the ground between Israel and Lebanon. It is more about the decision of the Hezbollah, if the organization is ready to take responsibility or to take the advice of the Americans, not to give Israel the reason to go to war. It is not connected to what's going on militarily between the two sides. It's a political issue of Hamas, of Nasrallah and the Iranians, and it's not in our hands. What we see now in the north is not an escalation. I think it's a wrong description of the situation. Two sides which decided at the beginning of the war that they don't want to be involved in a big war in this area. And they put kind of area for gaming. 10 kilometers from this side, 10 kilometers from this side. Both sides are not making too many damage to the other side. They understand that there are limitations. Whenever one side is doing something which is out of the rules of the game, the other side is reacting by doing something which is out of the rule of the games from his side. But both sides are keeping the rules and the gaming area because both sides do not want a war. Our policy is very clear. First of all, very strong defense. We don't want any infiltration into Israel. At the beginning, the Hezbollah make some efforts, and I think that we spoke about it, to bring teams of Palestinians to infiltrate to Israel. All of them failed, very close to the fence. All of them had been killed. None of them was captured or succeeded to run away. And they stopped it. And since then, what they are doing is launching rockets, missiles, mortars, whatever, like anti-tank missiles, by the way, which is a huge damage and huge challenge for our system because it's going very low and very fast, and we don't have a way to intercept it. And what they succeeded to do is mainly huge damage to real estate in Israel, but huge damage. I'm speaking about 1,000 buildings which had been either destroyed or almost destroyed. And the main achievement of Hezbollah in this case is the fact that there are in Israel around 80,000 Israelis which had been evacuated or evacuated themselves from the area, and they are refugees inside Israel in good terms. They are in hotels, not in refugee camps, but they're refugees. They don't have, they lost their houses, they cannot go back. The education system cannot provide them with the solution to their children, and so on and so forth. And what Israel is trying to do in this defensive situation is to erode part of the military capabilities of Hezbollah by killing many terrorists and big number of commanders of the forces on the ground. I must say, I was surprised by the success of killing so many of them. We killed more than 350 Hezbollah members. I'm not speaking about the Palestinians. The Palestinians are another 70 or 80. And between the 350, around 5% are senior commanders. Few names I know since I was there 30 years ago. You know, people are saying that everyone will have substitute, you know, he was killed, someone will take his position. No. Here, when you lose someone, you lose 15 years of experience. It's not like in the IDF that if a colonel will be killed, he has experience, or I don't know, in his job, 2 years, and another job, another 10 years. No, here you speak about people who are fighting in the south, some of them in the last 20 years. And any substitute to them will have less experience and will have less authority on the ground. And because it is not, you know, exactly an army, it's more a militia. The issue of whom should be trusted and who can make decisions and who has the authority to make it and to enforce it, it's a huge issue. So the success of killing around 15 senior and another 340 terrorists is a huge issue for Hezbollah. This is one effort. The other effort is to identify the infrastructure which was built in the south, a kind of launching pad for the special forces against Israel, the Radwan forces, and to identify it and to destroy it. And here, all the technology that we have, air photos, drones, infrared, blah, 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 everything is here to identify the infrastructure and to use the opportunity to destroy it. Why it is so important? Because this area had been prepared by the Radwan forces as part of their preparations to launch the surprise attack on Israel. And we are speaking here about force which is double than in his strength than the special forces of Hamas, which made the 7th of October, more than double. And here I think the success to identify, to locate, and to destroy is very significant, in spite of the fact that in the media, you don't hear about it. And in the media, when you look, you don't understand that happened. It is something that Hezbollah understands and we understand, and Hezbollah is paying a price here. And I can say that if today they want to surprise us in a 7th of October kind of an attack, leave alone the defensive side of Israel, which is much, much stronger. I'm speaking about the offensive situation of Hezbollah. It cannot be done. They need few days or more to reorganize themselves, and they will come back to the area in which they had been before the 7th of October, that much of their infrastructure was destroyed. Not everything, but a lot. This is the second effort. The third effort is, I can give you an example, what is the situation. Before the war, the Air Force didn't fly above Lebanon. Why? Anti-air missiles in Lebanon. Today, the Air Force is going on Lebanon from Beirut to Baalbek and then to the border. Why? We succeeded to erode their capability in this area. And this is only one example. We don't want to speak too much about the exact tools that we are using, because part of it will be used in the future, and we don't want that will be exposed. But anyhow, at the end of the day, all our success cannot solve the main problem of Israel or the main challenge for Israel. The fact that there are 80,000 Israelis, refugees in Israel. Why it is so important to emphasize? Because that might lead to a war, not because Hezbollah wants it, and not because Israel wants it, because Israel will be in a corner without other solution. Hochstein failed. We understand that the defensive measures that have been taken by Israel are not enough. Hezbollah is not ready to compromise, and we cannot live with 80,000 people, refugees in Israel. So it's very important to understand that even we have really apparently good success in the defensive side, no one succeeded to infiltrate to Israel. We have success in our offensive actions during the defensive stage, killing many Hezbollah members, commanders, destroying infrastructure, and so on and so forth. The strategic problem is not solved, and that might lead to a war.
If I could just push back or ask you about the claim that this is not an escalation and it's a game within set rules. But according to analysis that we just put out today, actually, General Major, there's been more Hezbollah attacks in June than in any other month so far during the war, and the month's not over yet. There's already been 40% more Hezbollah attacks in June than there were in May. How is that not an escalation?
It's not an escalation, it's a reaction. We killed more commanders in these 2 months than before. We reached some very important infrastructure of Hezbollah in Baalbek, which is 100 kilometers from Israel. So in most of the cases, not all the cases, but in most of the cases, this is a reaction of Hezbollah when they understand that we succeeded to do something that they didn't anticipate, and they don't have a good answer, so they are accelerating the number of rockets and missiles that they are launching into Israel. And other than the Cornet threat, which is something which is a problematic issue, Tropi can deal with it, but we don't have Tropi around facilities in Israel. We have it on tanks. And we know that even for tanks, it would be a huge problem. The Cornet is a huge problem. Other than that, they didn't succeed to make too much harm in Israel, but for the real estate that I spoke about. They didn't neutralize any of our military capability. They didn't succeed to kill too many of the ratio of people killed in both sides, leave alone the civilians in the Lebanese side is 1 to 15. I mean, it's huge. Hezbollah lost, without moving 1 centimeter from the fence, more people than Israel lost taking 80% of the Gaza Strip. Just to compare between the casualties number. But this is, at the end of the day, it does not make any difference for Israel when we don't have a solution to the 80,000 refugees.
Was the Hezbollah claim that they hit an Iron Dome battery this week? Was that accurate or was that disinformation?
I don't know, but even if it is true, it doesn't matter because it's a grid. If you take one element, the other element will cover it, and that will allow it to recover. So it doesn't matter. It's not a big issue. They succeeded to make some harm. I don't know if it is true or not. But even if it is true, the way that we are working with the anti-air, with the Iron Dome and the anti-missile systems in Israel, is not standalone batteries. It's a grid which each one is covering part of the others, and so even if there is somewhere a problem, it can be covered by the others.
If this is a game, as you said, and if one side crosses the rules, the other side also crosses the rules to demonstrate that's unacceptable, how do you avoid being in a tit-for-tat situation where each side just keeps punishing the other side more and more until you get to somewhere well beyond the game?
Very good question. And at the end, it's the sensitivities of both sides, that both sides do not want a war, and they know that the other side doesn't want a war.
Well, where's that line between something that's outside the game but still acceptable?
Only in the academic life there are such lines. In the real life there is no such line. It's you touch and go, you try and you learn slowly where are the areas in which you should be smarter not to touch. There is no such a line.
General Aish, there was news today that the IDF has approved operational plans for Lebanon. Can you tell us a little bit about what that means? Is that a major new development? Is that sort of just a regular bureaucratic occurrence? What should we take away from that? You're on mute, General.
I think we spoke about it last time. Let me start by saying that in terms of operational achievements, things have to be judged according to the strategic goal. And it's quite accurate that in terms of operational achievements, number of casualties at the side of Hezbollah, the level of damage we have inflicted to their military infrastructure, and so on and so forth, the achievements are very high. Having said that, on the Israeli side, civilians, residents of the north, are still out of their homes, and they are not there in their village to cultivate their land. So in terms of the strategic goal, we have still a long way to go. And I would like to link it to the fact that the readiness is there. The fact that the operational plans were approved by the J3 and the Northern Command commander, it means that the readiness is in a very high level. Now it brings us to what General Amidror have described regarding the boundaries where this escalation is taking place. You can plan whatever you want, but war is the kingdom of uncertainty. You can plan whatever you want. Only one mistake can change the whole equation. And even if boundaries were defined, and they were defined, no one can assure you that it will stay like that. And I'm afraid that when you link it to the fact that the IDF is now on full readiness after the IDF have inflicted a severe damage to Hezbollah. They have lost hundreds of operatives and tactical commanders and higher command leaders. After all of that, I think the strongest sign for their pressure is not only the fact that the residents of the southern part of Lebanon have left the south, but the fact that they are trying to expand the escalation towards Cyprus. And by that, in fact, they are calling the EU into that escalation. It's an open invitation for them. This is without saying a word about the fact that they are calling them major powers such as the US into that escalation. And I think it's a very clear sign that Hezbollah is under a lot of pressure. They are very good in PR, they are very good in propaganda, but when you are weighing the facts, when you are weighing the casualties, when you are weighing the level of damage created to their operational infrastructure and capabilities, I'm afraid that they are going to be asked by Iran very tough questions about their performance.
What is the likelihood that if, as General Amador said at the beginning of our discussion, major combat operations in Rafah are over in the next month, that the Northern Front quiets down as Gaza quiets down, and that there's sort of just a natural end to this that allows Israelis to return to their homes?
It's one of the alternatives, one of the options. But as I described earlier, you can plan whatever you want, and sometimes things have their own tendency, their own direction. And no one can assure you that it will stay like that. It can happen tonight. Only one mistake done by us or by them can change and divert the level of escalation. Right now, it's quite clear that although Hezbollah is suffering and have suffered a severe damage, they have the area of denial, which they can, on one hand, bury their deads, but they don't show everything to their public. They have that space to deny. But tomorrow it could be a severe attack with many casualties on something highly sensitive, and it can change the whole equation. The same on the Israeli side. And I would add on that the strategic patience that the Israeli leadership have shown by, allowing the residents of the north to leave their villages, and instead of moving immediately into an offense to remove the threat, to stay in defense positions, as we are, more than 8 months. And it's not the DNA of the IDF. So I'm afraid that we are very much close to be pushed to that corner that was mentioned by Amidron.
Has there been a change in the U.S. position on this? I mean, for a long time, the signaling from the administration here was, we don't want a wider war. We don't want a war in Lebanon. But this week we saw Amos Hochstein say, he apparently went to Lebanon and warned Hezbollah, if you don't stop this, you're going to get attacked by Israel. Is that a major change in American posture, or is it just different words?
I don't know. I'm sure that this is something right now that Minister Dermer and the National Security Advisor are discussing in Washington with their colleagues. But it's quite clear that after Hamas have rejected the suggested deal for the hostages, and Amos Hochstein was rejected by Hezbollah, I assume that they're having their own estimate about what is the reality that we are dealing here.
If I may add to this question, I think, and here it's, we might say that they have another view. It's not about knowing something, but my assessment is that as much as it will be clear to Lebanon and Hezbollah through the Lebanese that the Americans are going with Israel in this situation if Hezbollah refuse to all the offers. And Israel is not alone in the war. And the Americans will do whatever they can to support Israel, mainly by giving more munition and so on. That might put some pressure on Hezbollah. If Hezbollah understands that because of many American considerations. They're not going into it. The Americans are not ready to go with Israel. They will not stop Israel because Hezbollah just rejected the offers of the Americans. They will not stop Israel, but Israel will have to do it by itself with what it has, and the Americans will not be recruited by themselves to help Israel, mainly by giving more ammunition. I think that the more it will be clear that America is in the war trend with Israel, then less with Israel, it will be easier to put some pressure on Hezbollah. It is not going to be as easy anyhow because Nasrallah is not making those decisions by himself. He has to consult the Iranians, and the Iranians have a lot of interest to drag Israel to another war, and the Americans will be busy here and not on other places. But the more it will be clear that the Americans are with Israel, the less are the chances that he will refuse. The more it will be clear that Israel is alone in this war, it will be easier for Nasrallah to say no.
Thank you. Let me turn to some of the questions from our audience. Michael Salzhauer asks, recently another analyst wrote about the possibility of a peacekeeping operation in Gaza run by the US with a Palestinian army. Does this make any sense?
If the Americans are ready to fight Hamas, it makes sense. I don't think that the Americans are ready to fight Hamas, and I don't think the Americans should fight Hamas. This is something that Israel should do. But if the Americans will say, guys, we are taking responsibility, we will fight Hamas on the ground, the Palestinians will help us, or we will help the Palestinians, whatever will be the language, God bless you.
How realistic is it to expect that a security force could be made up of Palestinians that would be effective against Hamas?
I'll tell you a story. A few years ago, someone from the highest echelons in America told the prime minister that if you want to know how good is the American ability to build army, you should be invited to Afghanistan to see the success of the Americans to build the Afghan military forces.
Understood. All right. Next question. Dan Pollock asks, is there a desire by the IDF general staff to end the war more quickly than the political leadership wants? How is a situation like that resolved in the Israeli system?
I think it's very clear. At the end of the day, the IDF controlled by the civilians, and they can say whatever they want during the argument. But at the end of the day, the decision in the hand of the civilians. We don't have the system of America that the president is the commander in chief, but the army is under the control of the government through the Minister of Defense. And the decision of the civilians are those which, at the end, are making the ability of the IDF to implement. Here, I think that if you speak with generals in the GHQ, in the Southern Command, it's totally not true. In the Southern Command, the highest echelon wants to finish the job, meaning to destroy the military capability of Hamas. There is no any argument from this level. In the GHQ, there are some generals that say that the situation of Hamas after Rafah will be such that it is not a great danger to Israel, and they cannot regrouping and rebuild their capabilities. And this is the time to stop, to go to a big war in Lebanon, and then to continue to clean up Gaza, because in the meantime, because of the very low level of capabilities of Hamas after Rafah, and the fact that it is disconnected from the Sinai, and they don't have any domestic production capabilities, it is not be bad idea to say, okay, guys, we will see you a year from now, and to finish the job in Lebanon, because that will allow Israel to take out of Gaza much more forces, unlike the situation that I described, that the mopping up is continuing. So here it's not about the policy more, it is about more what is the real priority and how much you put in your first priority. It's not without logic, by the way.
Please, if I may add about that, I'm not sure the context is the context for the question is only the one that General Amador have answered. I think it's part of the toxic discussion within the Israeli society. Just to make it clear, the IDF is there to fulfill the missions as they are given by the political level, and as the strategic goal is defined. And definitely they are expected to do it as fast as they can. Otherwise, they are not using the resources as they should.
All right. Our next question is, wasn't the working assumption that Hamas did not want a war pre-October 7th? Is the assumption that Hezbollah does not want one not a critical assumption that must be very carefully analyzed? How is Israel sure? Does Hezbollah not want to accomplish as much as possible prior to the possible change of administrations in the U.S.?
First of all, yes, that was the assumption about Hamas. And the fact that someone made mistake once doesn't say anything about the second mistake. As you know, in April 73, the IDF intelligence said that the war is not going to be initiated by the Egyptians. They were right, and the head GHQ was mistaken. The idea within the GHQ was that in April that the Egyptian army is going to a war. In October, the intelligence said it's not going to be a war, and there was a war. So the fact that they were right first time doesn't say anything about their mistake in the second time, and vice versa. It's not mistakes which are connected. So the fact that someone made a mistake in one issue doesn't say anything about the fact that what he's saying now is a mistake. And here we have a different situation. There was a test, a huge one. In the 7th of October, Israel was in the weakest point of its military capability. Almost everything didn't work. And Hezbollah decided not to join the war. It's a fact, you know, I cannot argue about it. It's a fact. And later on, when the exchange of fire between two sides, we can judge, we can see what they are doing. Not what they have in mind, I don't know. But what they are doing, they are very, very, very cautious, not to make something that might lead to crossing a red line that no one knows what is the red line that might lead to a war. They are very, very cautious. But anyhow, it doesn't matter, because the level of readiness of the defensive forces of the Northern Command now are in such a high level that even if they initiate a war, they will find the strong IDF on the other side of the border. So now I'm speaking about the present situation. In the future, the question might be raised again, and it will be a good question. But now the situation on the ground now is such that it will be very, very hard for the Hezbollah, as I described his situation on the other side of the border, and the readiness of the IDF in this side of the border to launch a surprise attack on Israel. They can launch many rockets and missiles. For that they don't need any preparations. But here the readiness of the anti-missile systems of Israel is always in very high level. They probably succeed to reach some of the targets, but many of them will be intercepted, and that will be a declaration of war, of a full war.
General Aish, do you want to add anything on this? You're on mute.
Just
Yeah.
okay. I'm with you. I think we have to study carefully the lessons of October 7th, but we have to study the right lessons. That's the whole issue. And if we are going to take all the possible measures all the time in every front, I'm not sure that the Israeli economy or the Israeli society will be able to bear it. Remember that right now, when we are talking about forces deployed in the north, the majority are reservists. When we are talking about forces fighting in the south, quite a lot of them are reservists. So at the end of the day, we have to calculate everything and take it in consideration. And it's not that you can, draw one lesson from one case to the others. Having said that, it seems to me like at least in the next decade, we are going to be very cautious. And the issue is not only about defensive position, it's also about when you are taking preemptive approach. This is the issue that we will have to consider as part of the Israeli strategy, or should I say the Israeli defense strategy.
Well, General Amador, General Aish, thank you very much for your time this evening and your insights as always. It was a pleasure to discuss with you. Thank you to all those of you who joined in. Have a good afternoon and look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you. Good
night.
Good night. Yes. Well,
Good
almost
night.
good morning even.
Bye.